Georgetown and South Park are neighborhoods of Seattle located in the Duwamish River Valley. In September of 2016, Washington State University senior landscape architecture class visited South Park in Georgetown to host a series of community workshops addressing solutions and adaptations to climate change and sea level rise. Each workshop hosted a range of interested community members and design professionals. At the end of each workshop, 3 teams were formed based on the individual's preferred mode of action: maintaining the status quo while having an emergency evacuation plan, transitioning towards embracing and living with water, and lastly, proactively planning for future and community-based relocation. This presentation focuses on the feedback gathered from the youth that attended these workshops. Their insights in the workshop helped to generate several locations for best practice prototypes. Compiling the data generated by the students led us to create a holistic youth adaptation of their design ideas in Georgetown and South Park. By providing basic maps such as land use, showing the industrial zone in purple, the residential in yellow, and their relationship to each other, circulation, showing pedestrian thoroughfares in green, desired pedestrian access ways in red, desired waterfront access in blue, as well as dangerous intersections and freight routes. Sea level rise is shown incrementally at 2 feet of sea level rise, 4 feet, and 6 feet. The participants had the data to justify their design intentions and create a series of loose maps representing a vision plan for adapting to sea level rise and climate change.
The 3 groups that Will mentioned created maps that illustrated where they had thought the proposed prototypes would best fit in the 2 neighborhoods. In this first student map, it is worth pointing out the location that the Floodable Park prototype was proposed. In the second student map, connection across the river was really emphasized. The students who created the third map were interested in locating places to implement floating structures. This progression of slides shows the compiled student responses in a clear and layered way. The first map shows street canals. This is floodable streets, elevated streets, floating boardwalks, floating infrastructure, floatable parks, including along the waterfront and floating houses, vegetation, with the special note of Boeing to combat their contribution to pollution in the 2 neighborhoods, water treatment, green roofs, and floating farms. Floatable parks offer room for the rising river while also treating the combined sewer overflow. This means that instead of sewer matter and toxic runoff flowing directly into the water, it is filtered through a series of phytoremediation ponds. The students that reviewed the floatable park prototype decided that a good location for this type of park would be on the river bank near the slip at the corner of 8th and Marginal Way in Georgetown. They used the provided land use and CSO location maps to determine this location. The existing site is an inlet and an industrial parking lot. Not much else was discussed about the floatable park prototype except that the students showed an appreciation for added vegetation to help mitigate pollution in the 2 neighborhoods. They were very vocal about their concern for people's health. This section shows the inflow of CSO into the prototype and the movement of the CSO matter through phytoremediation ponds, where toxins are removed from the hazardous material and the clean water is pumped back into the towns or into the neighborhoods to be reused. This area is the room for the river, which as the river rises, the floodwater will increase in this holding pond. Green roofs have many superpowers, one being their ability to capture water before it inundates the exhausted sewer system, and another being their ability to clean polluted air. The neat thing about the green roof system prototype is that it was pitched by the students. Their concern with the air quality left them to come up with green solutions. Their idea was to put as much green space as possible in these neighborhoods. This is an image that shows what South Park would look like with a system of student-proposed green roofs. Their goal was to clean the air, but capturing water for the gardens will also prevent a CSO overload. Enter the Brooklyn Grange, America's #1 rooftop farm and intensive green roof business. In New York City, fines are charged for CSO backups during storms. Rooftop gardens like the Grange help mitigate the runoff while cleaning the air and also providing a social space. It costs $200,000 to construct this 1 square acre rooftop farm, but they made their money back in a year by selling produce, hosting private events, and cutting the building operation costs. This could stand as an example, perhaps at a smaller scale, in Georgetown and South Park. The rooftop could supply specialty food to local restaurants, a very trendy move, and also host educational events, all while doing something good for the local environment.
For the next best practice prototype, a floating farm classroom was suggested. Located in close proximity to Georgetown's community college, a floating farm classroom was suggested. The site location is an industrial inlet on the north shore of the Duwamish River. This multi-use structure will educate the communities on how to adapt to sea level rise. The workshop participants suggested that a curriculum focusing on climate adaptation should be integrated into local schools. This class will host students while also providing the area with clean water, food, and energy. This best practice creates a symbiotic relationship between plants, water, and fish. Rainwater could help support annual residential requirements, so the structure's roof captures rainwater while the interior collects condensation from the water below. The plants clean the rainwater, which is then pumped into the fish garden, where fish add nutrients to be absorbed by the plants. The plants and fish can be grown year-round in order to supplement local needs. Clean water is returned to the water body. As for energy, this design can be fitted with several types of renewable energy sources. OTEC, or ocean thermal energy conversion, uses different temperatures in the water to create energy. And of course there is solar and wind power. The Phytoremediation Boardwalk. Many students suggested access from 8th Avenue in Georgetown to 8th Avenue in South Park, where over 100 years ago there used to be a bridge. A pedestrian boardwalk was suggested in its memory. This idea was combined with the process of phytoremediation in order to clean the river of contaminants using plants. The phytoremediation boardwalk would not only reconnect the communities to the river while cleaning the river, it would also create a much-needed access between the two neighborhoods.
The best practice of amphibious structures was introduced as a method to adapt the residential to sea level rise. The youth adaptation places the amphibious development in proximity to the Duwamish on both sides of the river. However, one location chosen by the youth was the EPA Superfund site, Terminal 117. This location is not zoned for residential, but remains a wonderful candidate for a Salmon-Safe park and an amphibious interpretive center. As it exists today, Terminal 117 is a cleared plot along the Duwamish River. Soil remediation would be the first step in creating a public space here. Next, plantings will slow and retain water, both to mitigate water runoff into the river and to phytoremediate, absorbing toxins from the stormwater before it reaches the salmon habitat. An amphibious structure can serve as a salmon monitoring station for scientists. as well as an interpretive center for the community to educate others about our complex relationship with these amazing animals. Students wanted to address pedestrian access and climate change adaptation along the marginal way in Georgetown. The best practice implemented is a canal and linear park. By raising the freight to an unobstructed access way, a safe pedestrian path opens up. The canal would serve to mitigate stormwater from directly entering the Duwamish. Plantings phytoremediate and slow the flow of water through the canal. The youth adaptation for South Park and Georgetown addresses stormwater, rising sea levels, and pedestrian access. The design best practices of the CSO Park, Salmon-Safe Park, blue-green roofs, and Canal Street will help slow stormwater and lessen the chance of flooding. The CSO parks and canal streets double as ways to mitigate flooding from sea level rise by providing room for the river before it inundates the communities. Amphibious structures, as well as floating infrastructure like floating classrooms and a floating boardwalk, will help transition the communities of South Park and Georgetown towards living and embracing water. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.